So today we are delighted to welcome to City Lights Pola Oloixarac, and she's celebrating the release of her new novel titled Mona. It is translated by Adam Morris and published by our friends over at Farrar, Straus, and Giroux. Ms. Oloixarac was born in Buenos Aires. Her debut novel, Savage Theories, was a breakout bestseller in Argentina and in Spain and was nominated for a Best Translated Book Award. In 2010, Granta recognized her as one of the best young contemporary novelists in Spanish. Ms. Oloixarac is a regular contributor to the New York Times, and her fiction has appeared in Granta, in N+1, in the White Review, and in an issue of Freeman's dedicated to the future of new writing. Previously a resident of San Francisco, she currently resides in Barcelona. So she's going to be joined in conversation today by none other than John Freeman. John is no stranger to City Lights, having entered our orbit on many happy occasions over the last few months and last few years. He is the founder of Freeman's, a literary annual of new writing. He is also executive editor at the venerable Alfred Knopf. He has also served as executive editor at LitHub and the former editor at Granta. He's the author and editor of numerous books. These include A Dictionary of Undoing, Tyranny of Email, and Tales of Two Planets, an anthology of new writing about inequality and the global climate crisis. This spring, he will publish Penguin Book of the Modern American Short Story, and with Tracy K. Smith, an anthology titled There's a Revolution Outside My Love. His work has appeared as, has been translated into 22 languages and has appeared in the New Yorker, Paris Review, and the New York Times. Although he's known for his wonderful prose and his editorial prowess, John's also really a very gifted poet, I might add. So please do check out his book of poetry. It's called The Park, and it's published by the venerable Copper Canyon Press. And also, just to let you know, we're going to be posting links for you to purchase books in the chat function. So it's activated the bottom panel of your dashboard, and that's also where you can post your questions and comments for the Q&A that's at the end of the talk. So yeah, it's such a pleasure to have both of you with us, gracing our virtual halls. Pola, John, welcome to City Lights Live. I think I need to unmute you both. Let me see if I can unmute you. Hold on. There we go. Welcome.
Thank you
Peter,
so much.
So nice to be here. Let me jump in by saying it's really nice to be here again with Pola Oloixarac, whose work I first encountered over a dozen years ago, I guess, when we were reading for the Granta book of the best young Spanish language novelists. And I think in the decade since, Pola has published 3 remarkable novels, The Savage Theories, Dark Consolations, and now Mona, all of which investigate the ways that knowledge is produced by groups of people and how those groups of people behave in strange and interesting ways, and how their bodies are often more in control of what they're trying to know than the theories and the conceptions of the world that they're eagerly putting out into the world to classify it. I think of her as an interesting supernova of science and ideas with literature. And in some ways, Savage Theories, which unfolds in the aftermath of the Dirty War and against the backdrop of a mathematician trying to come up with a unified field theory of existence, and Mona, which takes place at a literary festival in Sweden, seem to have very little in common, but there's an interesting through line between the two of them that has to do with classifying knowledge and ways of engaging in the world that we'll talk about today. But Pola, I just want to say hello. It's so great to see you. And without telling people too much about this book, it takes place in a literature festival in Sweden where Mona, a Peruvian novelist who's been on fellowship at Stanford, where she was sort of parlaying the identity game of being an indigenous Peruvian writer to her success, spends 4 days in competition for this 200,000 euro prize. And you and I have bumped into each other at festivals around the world, and we could probably make one with the group of people who are in this audience. What do you think those festivals are really for? at root when it comes down to it?
Well, I'm so thrilled to be here. I have to say, John, and just the notion that this is virtual, but at the same time it's so real that that we can have drinks in our places and at the same time cavort with our minds somewhere else. It's just really divine. But I think, yeah, that literary festivals are kind of the opposite. Like you have to really like physically kind of like all be there. Like your body is also a tribute to that goddess of literature that we're kind of like paying tribute to and putting, everything we've got, like literally our existence, in order to be near her or to know her or to smell what it is. So I find the idea of the festivals like very very interesting in terms of like experimenting with humans. I think we are definitely part of every festival is a part of an experiment of humans being close to this goddess, and what happens to them. Like maybe they turn into characters, maybe they turn into writers as they listen to another writer's voice, and that kind of brings out the novel or what they want to write. So I think they are kind of like talisman or magical moments where kind of anything can happen.
Okay.
And certainly really weird things have happened, right? And because you know them better than me, because you are one of the real champions of world literature. That is true.
Yeah, and I feel that sincerely, and yet simultaneously there is a kind of world literature that you're poking fun of in this book. This is a savagely satirical book, but it's a tender book too, and the balance that you walk in that line is very impressive, because as Mona goes across these days in the festival, she gets progressively more disassociated from reality and from her body to some degree, and she has interactions with a kind of series of sirens, almost mythological figures of these writers, the angry writer, the performative writer, the sort of writer who is reenacting Arabness in certain ways, the French writer who's tries briefly to pull a fast one on the crowd and steal Beckett's words in front of their very eyes. And I wonder what this progression of interactions, in addition to just being great fun, what you're trying to challenge in Mona, either for her to face up to, or what you find, what kind of narrative space is opened up by setting in motion this sort of progression through world literature, through these figures?
Well, I kind of realized I didn't think of it while I was doing it, but then I kind of realized that even if I was thinking about world literature, and even if this was taking place in Sweden, the things that I was kind of like in discussion with, or that I was struggling to understand, were actually American ideas, and how American ideas have become an export of culture. And even if, like, for example, I come, from kind of like a leftist tradition, like most middle class people in Argentina, where you couldn't really have Coca-Cola because that was the empire, or you couldn't really watch Disney films because that was also the empire trying to put ideas in you. And now there is a complete switch in which the people more on the left have completely absorbed theories and ways of thinking about society that are completely American, and I think that it's very interesting, because we don't think of race, and we don't think of identity in Latin America or elsewhere or in Europe in the same way that we think in the United States. And I kind of realized that when I was living there, because I realized that when I was there, I was a person of color, and I've never imagined that such thing existed. And this sounds very weird, and also I was treated as an ignorant because I didn't know my status as a person of color. Like, she doesn't know herself, she doesn't know she's a person of color. So until I really wore a t-shirt that says brown and proud, I wasn't aware of myself. So, but at the same time, I noticed that if I cross the border, I go to Mexico or go to Europe or go to Latin America or anywhere, France, I wasn't a person of color. So this notion only existed in the United States. And so I started to kind of think differently of what was expected of me, what I was supposed to do as a writer who is WOC, a women of color or person of color, and I kind of and I saw that in a way there was this kind of choreography or this kind of game in which we writers of colors are kind of expected to be really thankful, you know, to the whole society for you know, having us in, and you know, and so you can also trade like all these immigrant narratives that actually are the new American dream, where, you know, immigrants are thankful to the host nation. But at the same time, you are also invited as a person of color, not as a person who is talking about literature or what she's writing. And so it's always like from the point of view of a brown person that now we have like that covers this slot. Is there anything you'd like to say? So in this game in which you are invited to talk to make other people feel virtuous, at the same time, you know, it was the beginning of the Trump years where, you know, it like the immigrant narrative of like happiness wasn't really rolling. Like our visa status were like, I don't know, in trouble, we had to leave, etc. And at the same time, like I would see how this cultural export kind of like was booming outside of the United States. And so how a lot of people were kind of like trying to be forced to think of themselves and avoiding years or maybe a century of internationalism to kind of like think, well, literature is exactly the thing that makes us together, it's not our identifiers. And the same happens with translation. It's how you root empathy in the fact that you are other, not that you're always kind of the same. So it was kind of like these ideas that I was kind of struggling with when I was writing this book. So it's odd because it's about, or it's said somewhere else, but at the same time it's struggling with American ideas as an export.
Yes, that's very clear. And as the days go on, Mona, who arrives on a transcontinental flight from California, where she's taken 2 Valium as she's come across, she's vaped and she's gotten drunk, is in a state of progressive sort of disassociation. And over the course of the book, there's a couple things that escalate. You know, there's mentions of bruises on her body, which eventually the book will answer. And there's also in the background the story of a Peruvian girl who's been missing, Sandrita, and those news alerts kind of buzz on her phone. And the book does this really interesting series of orbits out into conversations, which are very theoretical, in which the body is seen only as a representational object, back into Mona's body, which is vividly, beautifully, constantly described as a kind of contact sheet with reality. It's a deeply, deeply embodied book, even more so than Savage Theories. And I'm curious what writing through her body in the way that you are, what it brings to the narration, and what you were doing by juxtaposing that with some of the exported ideas that you just described.
Well, thank you so much for reading it that way. I really love it. I also feel it like that it's a very embodied book. I mean, because all the plot is, everything is through her and through her body. No, well, when I was writing it, I mean, a part of me was living in San Francisco and also discovering like all these magical things, such as the cannabis bar. Thanks to my translator, I should add, Adam Morris, who did an absolutely incredible job, because he's so fun and has such an incredible sense of humor that he really like rewrote the book in such a fun way that it's amazing. But yeah, but at the same time, like talking about being embodied, I was pregnant. So, so I was about to have my anchor baby as an immigrant. That was my experience. And then she was born, and immediately kind of Trump was elected, and we would watch, the inauguration speeches, and it was quite a dream. It was incredible. So yeah, I was writing it in this kind of like enhanced bodily state or hormonal state or whatever, and it was intense. I really loved writing it, because I started in English, and then I realized that I needed flesh, and the flesh was in Spanish, so I translated what I had into Spanish and then just took off and ended it like that. And yeah, I like that it's a more controlled book, and at the same, I don't know, it has another kind of wildness to it, but I wanted to do something like kind of shorter and like only in one place, to keep experimenting and to do I don't know, something different from what I was doing before. Something, that it's her vision, it's the plot is her flesh, and just like, go with her, and all the things that she's trying to do to not see herself, and how she is dealing with trauma in the end.
Yeah, this is one of the most photographed books I've ever read. As I was reading it, I was cutting passages, because Pola is, among many things, a wonderful writer of set pieces. And there are some amazing sex scenes and vivid descriptions of Mona receiving oral sex in various continents.
Wait, but some people think that that's very cringe-worthy, because there are some quotations of Borges while this is taking place. So I think that's very funny. That
it's cringeworthy.
Yeah, that Borges, putting some Borges, because she has like some Colombian lover that thinks it's a great opportunity to just walk some poetry into her Sancta Sanctorum, and well, it's like a funny situation. I think it's very important to make very funny sex scenes.
Well, actually, there are a variety of sex scenes. There's a lot of fair degree of masturbation, facilitated by Skype and technology. There's this sort of constant ebb and flow of arousal, which is very well described. There's consensual sex. There's the other kind. There is silly sex, and then there's really tender sex, like tender take care of you sex. And I wonder if you can talk about the varieties of writing sex, because I've never seen so many different types of sex in one book in such a beautiful kind of panoptical way, where it doesn't mean any one thing, it doesn't happen in any one way, it has many different modes of.
Oh, that's amazing way to say panoptical sex. It's true. Well, this is the experience of being a woman, because you become a vessel also of your desire, of other people's desire, and I really wanted Mona to have that kind of passivity in a sense, a kind of like submissiveness, because she also connects pleasure to kind of like totally losing her mind. And I remember reading Catherine Millet, who's an amazing French writer. She has like all these texts about having orgies with 40 people and philosophizing about it, that are so fun, and I really recommend it. Like La vie sexuelle de Catherine M, the sexual life of Catherine M. And I remember I was really shocked when I read it at first, but I realized that I wanted to see kind of like more of that sexual reality of women's lives, like its openness and secludedness, and how secret it is, and all the things that you're supposed to think or not think, or how sex is also a place to think, because it can be kind of like really inspiring, just because well, with this idea that your mind is going away, or that she's kind of like looking into that, also kind of like other kinds of thoughts can also rush in. So this was kind of like I don't know, a good experiment to have. That, yeah, I hope you guys enjoy.
It's this book has a fair degree of sex in it as well, but it was published, I think, in 2009, right? Is that when it? 2008, and so for a book in 2008 to have sort of video pornography in it, or people filming themselves having sex, felt really risque in a sense, and it was at the forefront of thinking about the way that we mediate our sex lives, or they sometimes in states of trauma that mediation steps in to buffer you from the meaning of what you're doing. Or and I wonder if writing a book in 2019, 10 years later, if there were things that about technology that you felt like were still at the not yet entered into the novel, and it doesn't have to necessarily do with sex, but just in general.
Well, I think Mona is has in a way a different relationship with technology, because I think in Savage Theories, which, I mean, I don't have it, but I have it it just came out in German, so it's like Wilde Theorien, and like the characters like really feel like they can change and hack the internet and do things to it, and so they make video games, they hack Google Earth, they put all the instructions so you can hack it too, and those things, like there was this feeling that there was like a right to resistance, and back then, and I think that has changed a lot. Like a lot of us like don't even think about any right of resistance, like kind of like take for granted that, well, yes, technology is ubiquitous, it wants our lives as thinks of us as in terms of carcasses that are just pouring out data, and is not even interested in us, but just in the data. So I think that that's kind of also kind of reflected in a way in Mona, because she's hunted by social media, or hunted by feeds of nudes, but not nudes, news. And but I mean, there is like thinking about like what we can do with technology, or like there's a talk about that inside of the novel, like it is dealt with, but Mona, I mean, like most of us has also moved from that position of really believing that we could do things to the internet, to a kind of like the internet is something that happens to us, and that we're just part of this this huge nervous system, and we're connected to it, and we're just kind of like trying to survive in it. but that there's no so much that we can do to kind of like make a stop to that, or to separate ourselves from it. So I think it's kind of like part of where our collective biography of as a species, as part of the internet, it's now. And it's also a more subjective book. It's like it's really embedded in her body, and so yeah, like technology is not really kind of getting there still. Like that's her, the sacred space. That's also her sex. That's, you know, where darkness is, where writing happens, where when you are, you know, in this hole, in this being alone, and that's what saves you.
Yeah, in Dark Constellations, one of the threads of that is the creation of a total surveillance state. And even though that part of the book is in the future, I feel like Mona is ideal-wise set after that, as in we've accepted the surveillance state in Mona by and large. It's been incorporated, and it's actually mutated people's ideas and how they perform and how they speak even. And so the book seems to be, among other things, an investigation as to where is the sacred space, where does privacy, where's the inner person, where does that part of them lie? And you know, one of the things the book is thinking about is how language can give us access to that, because amongst other things, Mona sings in Spanish, she writes poems in French, she trades jokes about Horatian odes in Swedish, and there's a constant ongoing discussion about the way that language is a kind of dark art, you know, that's connected to the body and to some of the mortality complexes that the body comes with given our species. And I wonder if you can say a little bit about language, the body, and death, because that's a really interesting collision of themes that comes later in the novel, and it's not one I've ever seen before in fiction.
I'm obsessed with those three, and with death and sex and writing, or the body, if you want to not call it sex. I have kind of the feeling that I don't know, we're kind of like writing to investigate, you know, what's going on with those. And sometimes I just feel like the whole enterprise, you know, from Philip Roth, it's just kind of like to kind of sort this out, like what's going on with this. I kind of love to reread, you know, these guys, or, you know, sometimes guys that are supposed to be misogynistic or evil or not feminist. Well, they were also kind of like involved or trapped in a particular like relationship, you know, that connected death and the body and writing, and I think it's good to kind of, you know, think with them again, and like pay another ear to them in you know, in a fresher way. Even if like the instinct or the collective instinct is to shut down the voices that are not, you know, as tuned as we want them to be, are not positive, are not like rooted in like the identifiers that we want them to be, still like they're looking for, I mean, this darkness is really worth investigating, and I don't know, I hope we can, I mean, there's so much more to experiment with it as well, that I don't know, it's, you know, it's Bowman books, I mean, it's kind of, it's everywhere. So I don't know. Well, then you'll tell us, guys, what are the books that you would recommend to following that triad?
The sex, death, and literature triad. I really encourage everyone to pick up a copy of Mona. It's so thoughtful and so fun to read and so funny. And I guess as you think of questions, you know, I don't want to ask you to pin this book to any actual figures, But it did make me call to mind Rachel Cusk's final book in the Outline trilogy, which takes place at literary festivals in which you have some monologuers. And in her book, the narrator falls away, and it becomes almost a kind of montage of quotes. Yet Mona never disappears. I mean, she's always there, even when she's being mansplained to or whatever. And I wonder if you were at all aware of or writing into or against forms of recent autofiction when you were putting this together, because there is some discussion in here about what exactly autofiction is, which is pretty amazing to pull that off and yet have it still feel like a novel.
Right. Well, I heard of Rachel's books after I finished the book, so that was good for me, because otherwise I would have felt like, oh no, I would have felt a little paranoid that we might be kind of, while I was writing it, I would have felt pressed. But then I was happy that, I mean, that even though we explore certain themes, our books are different experiments. Also, because I enjoyed her prose a lot, but you have this feeling that is, all these tete-a-tetes, and that has kind of like a different rhythm to it. Like she's always alone with a person that conveys a story or a short story, and I really and Mona behaves differently in the sense that kind of all the stories are conveying into her, and like her body is something that she's also kind of, it's part of the story that is not being told. It's like it's the voice that is not being talked, because she's escaping.
Yeah.
And we still don't know. Wait, but you were saying about a tradition. Oh yeah, the autofiction. I wanted to write it in the genre of autofiction, but to write a novel as as a work of imagination, which is the way I understand novels to be, and also as a place to discuss ideas and novels of ideas, because those are the things that interest me the most. Like, I don't know, from La Montaña Mágica. But I think it's a great genre, autofiction, because I think it creates this intimacy with the reader, that that you're shedding off like all this truth. And so there's something pornographic about it that I think readers like, because they're really into porn. No offense, no blame. So it was really fun to kind of work with that, and I give some details, some things that would make me, the author, kind of vulnerable, in the sense that I am being exposed. So kind of to control that exposition and to feel like, okay, so, oh, this is really telling us like about this editor who's a bitch or something like that. Because I think that when readers find that things are truthful, they I don't know, pheromones rush differently. And I think this is an issue in fiction, because of course fiction is truthful, because as long as you feel it is, but you also have to kind of like work with other pornographic props, so that it's an enhanced sense of truth, that is a truth that can be proved, and that can be linked. But of course this creates other problems, because people can think like, oh, she's talking about herself, like this is like complete self-regard, and this is I don't know, kind of like a play of like what pain is supposed to be for writers, and at the same time it's like you need to create those moments of intimacy and that vulnerability, where you are the same as, where the author is the same as the character. I don't know, for some kind of loops to fall in, and then everything rushes so fast, and I think it's a good effect, even if, you know, some people can think, you know, that or yeah, you can be misunderstood as not being literary, that just you're talking about yourself. And that also gets punished because you're not supposed to talk about yourself. So it's also a very thin line in which, like, autofiction is welcomed as a genre, but at the same time you're not supposed to talk so much about yourself, because, you know, that doesn't really roll. And so I think that's interesting, because you go in, you thread into places that you're not really supposed to go, and that's always exciting. I mean, that's where I want to go. I want to go where I'm not supposed to go.
There's, right? Yeah, and that's where so much of the power comes from this book, is this triple fake out of getting people to think that you're confessing to something which you're not, but you're also familiar enough, and the people on the peripheral vision are familiar enough to feel like it's true, and so therefore it's believable. But then you're not talking about yourself because other people dominate Mona as a character verbally. And there's some questions coming in, and one of them that was in here a little while ago was just, you know, did you ever, I'm going to interpret this question, Ashley Jones asked it, do you feel that you write differently, knowing now that you're a POC within the American context, and then you would have had you reconciled yourself to that idea? I mean, that's a really interesting question. You know,
am I a POC? I ask myself every night that question. Don't we all? Like, and what does it mean? The thing is, I need to be in the United States to really ask that question, because that question doesn't have meaning outside of the United States. So every time I go to Miami or somewhere, I ask to myself, like, how do I feel as a person of color right now?
yeah.
And as a person of color, and now no joke, as a person of color, I'm thrilled to find a voice to challenge the narratives of what people of color are supposed to write, and to challenge the narrative of what, you know, immigrants are supposed to feel, as, you know, to be so thankful to the United States that is welcoming them or not welcoming them. I don't know. I think it's I want to be of different colors, you know. I don't know what is color. I really don't. Is color like something, I don't know, violet? I'm into violet, but I mean, I also like pink. It's a very vague title also to wear, because it also implies that there are white people and people of color. So it's either you're white or you're everything else. Like, how many colors are there? It's just, it enhances the idea that the normal are the whites, which is just kind of against, you know, what we would like to think, that, you know, we're all, you know, in our difference is what makes us special in all these different ways. But it's just weird to be lumped together with all people just because I'm not white. Just call it non-white person. How do I feel as a non-white person? I feel great as a non-white person. I love writing as a non-white person. I will always write as a non-white. It's the best thing that ever has happened to me. And I really recommend it. Become a non-white person and write, because it's amazing.
Pola, reminds me of you and I were once at a festival in Brazil, and afterwards I went to the Museum of the Portuguese Language, which had in it a room in which every color description in any Jorge Amado book that ever was written was put into a woodblock and posted on the wall. And so there were color combinations that, and they were always used to describe people's skin. So there was like navy green and violet, and it was the whole spectrum. And building from that, there's a question about language from ADO. It says, you know, it says that most of the time world literature is kind of a monolingual Anglo wolf in sheep's clothing, and that you're probably making fun of this to a certain degree. And she wanted, ADO wants to know, if you could talk a little bit more about starting the novel in English and then switching to Spanish, if there's any relationship between world literature and that decision to switch.
Well, I had moved to the United States. I had moved to San Francisco. I was living in Glen Park, and I thought I was going to become an American. I was just, living there. I was happy there, and I said, like, well, now I write in English because this is my place, and then, of course, things changed so much. Like my immigrant status wasn't so clear. my visa, that was, kind of like a, normal thing to have, like wasn't so easy to have anymore. So that, of course, changed things. But regardless of that, I found that it was really fun for me. Like, it added another layer of adventure to write in Spanish, which at some point I was kind of like kind of bored with. I felt, well, new life, new language, I'm going to write in English. So I had started in English, and I loved the tone of it because it was different. So then when I translated it, it kind of rolled different as well. It sounded different to me. I understand that. I'm sorry. I remember like reading this Goethe, like something that, when he was in his 70s, he said to his to Eckermann, his disciple, he said, I can't tolerate my poetry anymore. I can only read myself in French. In French, it's good. And I thought that was so adorable. And I really feel like there's something that happens to you as well when you switch languages. You're kind of like, wow, I'm this new person. Like, oh, I can write in this language. It's such a trip, and it feels so powerful. And you are empowered by the language. And I love English. And I was like, well, I'm going to do it like that. And then I realized that I missed the other thing. So it was good because Mona kind of like had the two of them. Like, it had like the energy of the beginning, and then I translated it, and it was just like, this is Spanish. Like, I need the luxuriousness. I need the non-white element of it that rocks.
Jimene Blanco asked the question about, what cultural elements do you describe for the reader? This would be especially probably, Mona takes place in Sweden by a lake, everyone's speaking English except for when they're not. But like in these two books, there are references that some that you explain, some you don't. And I wonder how you decide when you go into the part of your descriptive eye, which comes into close focus, so that the reader understands what you're referring to if they're not from where the action is taking place.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I don't understand very well. How do I know?
How do you know when to explain something to the reader? Given that you're writing for a kind of global audience, or you're writing for yourself. When do you explain what something is?
I just try to follow kind of like the opportunity to define things my way. So it's like, you may not know what this is, but regardless of that, it's just an opportunity for me to kind of like be either funny or dismissive, or kind of like find a way to define what it is. And this also kind of separates me from just like talking to a specific milieu, like to a specific group of people. I have lost that specific group of people because I don't know, I haven't been living in Buenos Aires, my hometown, since 2010, because I was living in different cities, also in Argentina, in Bariloche, and then moving. And so I lost kind of the idea that I was just talking to a certain people that would understand all my references. It did happen to me in Savage Theories in my first novel that is full of Argentinian references because it deals so much with Argentinian history. But then I like for the German translation, for example, like we killed a lot of those. We only kept the ones that were just like an opportunity to say something funny about Argentinian culture, but not something that you're supposed to know because you were watching television, in the Argentinian 80s. Nobody said, please don't watch television from the Argentinian 80s. Like, you don't, I don't wish that for anyone. But yeah, I guess, yeah, I've been kind of feeling displaced for some time, and it comes natural to feel like, okay, this is what you're supposed to know about a story that is developing. And I hope things are clear enough.
Yeah, the one thing I love about all your books is they're sort of studies in genre. Like the Dark Constellations is sort of a little genre Neapolitan ice cream scoop. You've got science fiction, historical fiction, and then kind of contemporary fiction, sort of in a pile. And in this book, it's obviously autofiction. One of the readers asked about, how is literature with a capital L a character in all of your books? And I think that's an interesting question, because you're always writing into questions that literature is asking itself.
It's true. Well, I mean, it's like, it's the character, right? In a way, she, because of course she's a she, and we don't know her color. Her color changes and has so many colors. This is the goddess that we are trying to access, or to be kind of caressed by. I don't know. I think I love the idea, this ancient ideas of the muses, or kind of like more kind of religious figures that come onto you and that make the voice flow. I like, whether that is memory or whether that is deities or goddesses. I love that imaginary. I think it's kind of, I don't know, it's, well, also maybe because I'm a Catholic, and I don't deny it. I'm not an atheist. Like I think it's the idea of God is something very fun to have, and because Catholicism created all these amazing fictions that I think are worth praise, and people have been praising throughout, and also they have been fighting for a book for so long, and that I find that fascinating. So I like the idea of sacred things that are awaiting for us, and literature being also one of them. It makes the world feel more enchanted. It makes, I don't know, it also makes it more childish in a way, because these are kind of truths that people think are for children, or people that don't really understand so well, and I love paying attention to those things. It's my tribute to the Bible as children literature as well. It was children's literature for me, definitely, and to me it's the beginning of terror literature, because like nobody handles fear like those gods, the army, the god of armies. I was terrified about that, and I was fascinated as well. But so like this shock and awe, this like being terrified and hallucinating and being fascinated, that's those are things that keep you going, and that I think are crucial when you're writing and reading.
The book is Mona. I highly recommend you pick it up. We haven't heard you read. Do you want to read, or do you want to end on that beautiful note? It's up to you. It would be great to hear it.
I can read one page if you want.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, we're running out of time, right? Um, She'd been born in Peru, but claiming indigenous ancestry in any other context would have been outrageous, much like calling herself a person of color anytime prior to her arrival in the United States. There was a niche sort of glamour to it, like being a rare specimen of an endangered species, as though her mysterious DNA were a tiara encrusted with rare pearls, and the universities, each a massive arc navigating the great flood of the United States, heroically fulfilling their mission to save two of each beast. Strictly speaking, Mona preferred to think of herself as more of a mermaid, that cross between the fantastic and the inexplicable, whose true habitat was beneath the waterline, among the drowned. She couldn't help feeling like an outsider observer, a mermaid tourist. Anyway, the whole charade was just a bizarre exercise in academic bureaucracy, and besides that, the selection of racial subtype for Hispanic was obligatory. Mona's identitarian fantasy was well received on the campus. It related to her research topic and offered her the opportunity to advance her career merely by being herself, as much herself as humanly possible. Later, she realized it would have been more advantageous to add on some kind of physical disability, a slight but evident defect. But nobody's perfect. So.
Well, we have run out of our allotted time. Pola, John, thank you both so much. It was really such an honor to have you grace our virtual halls, and to all of you who've joined us from all over the world. It's very, very moving.
So much. This was really an honor. City Lights, I was obsessed with it when I was living there. I was just sometimes afraid of climbing in. I just felt so many things. That is just an incredible honor to be here tonight. And thank you, John. You're truly a dream. Thank you so much.
So nice to talk to you about this book. It's just absolutely extraordinary. I think 80 of my photographs in my phone are of passages from it. It's really quite a book. And so it's lovely to see you. And I hope next time we'll all be able to be in the poetry room next time.
Paperback.